This is an open letter to Miss Bahar Jalali and in extension to NPR. Here's the thing, Miss or Mrs. Jalali. I heard your interview on NPR and I saw your picture of Afghan women traditional clothing, and I heard your interview on NPR regarding the situation with the Afghan women, and I gotta tell you, I don't think you're helping the Afghan women situation with Afghan women. And I'm writing this, I'm talking this letter to let you know that I don't think you're helping. And here is why. As I'm sure you are living in Maryland, probably in a very nice neighborhood in Maryland, in a affluent neighborhood with a lot of pink-skinned neighbors, and all regularly observed by the police and law enforcement, in a very nice civilized setting. You're living in Maryland, I'm sure of that. Being a professor of university, you have probably a good income, and you have put yourself in a good situation in your setting in Maryland, I guess. What I don't understand is the way you were talking about Afghan women. It sounded to me like, imagine this, that you, from that affluent setting in Maryland, have a brother who lives in a seedy part of Maryland, and there are some prostitutes and pimps and drug sellers and drug buyers outside in the street in his neighborhood, in your brother's neighborhood. And once a year you visit your brother. I'm just imagining this scenario. Once a year you visit your brother in that seedy part of Maryland, and you advise your nieces that yes, you shouldn't wear such modest clothing, and you should wear more modern clothing, and you should wear more revealing clothing. Why don't you wear nice fashionable, revealing, sexy clothing? And you're giving this kind of advice to your nieces who are living in your brother's house in a seedy part of Maryland. I'm just imagining. Not at all paying attention that the environment that you're living in, that probably you can wear those sexy clothes without actually, fearing that you're going to become a sexual target, is your environment. Their environment is the same as your environment. You're totally oblivious to the fact that you're not living in the same environments, not even in Maryland. You and your potential nieces who are living in the seedy part of town in Maryland, you're not living in the same environment, so you cannot wear the same clothing. Because if they in their seedy neighborhood wear the same clothing that you wear in your good neighborhood, affluent neighborhood, they send the wrong signal. They may be mistaken for the prostitutes in the street that are doing business in their neighborhood in front of their house, because they don't want to be mistaken for prostitute. They don't want to be propositions. They don't want to have a sexual target on their back. They gotta wear a little more modest clothing because they just don't want to be targets, because their neighborhood is shitty. So I hear you coming on NPR and giving this kind of advice that yes, the traditional clothing of the women is in Afghanistan is colorful and is revealing and is twirling and is good for dancing. Well, yes, true, but it's not the whole truth. The whole truth is that for the past 100 years, 200 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, that has been the clothing of women. But they wore that kind of clothing only in front of other women. So the situation would be, there's a get together, there is a ceremony, there is a wedding, whatever there is a party. It's segregated to the men on one side and the women on the other side, and the women arrive all, dressed very modestly with a nice covering that covers their body. Then they go to the women's section of the party, then they remove that modest covering and they exhibit that colorful traditional clothing for other women to see. And one of the objectives is that if you have a young girl wear such revealing clothing, she's advertising herself. So maybe one of the women see the girl and suggests to her son that she looks good. I saw her, then blah blah blah. She dances well. Why don't you proposition her for marriage? That was the whole point. Other women see women in those clothes, not the man on the streets. Again, because it's a question of the environment. What you wear is a question of your environment. And frankly, I mean, you're giving bad advice. Here's the thing. In Afghanistan, in Iran, in Iraq, in India, that is not even Muslim, but still in that shitty area of planet Earth, in Africa, North Africa, South Africa, even children are sexual targets. Even children. I mean, why don't you explain bachebazi to, your fellow pinkskins? Your compadres who happen to be pinkskins. Explain to them that, yes, we live in such a place that traditionally, we're talking about a couple of 100 years, couple of 1,000 years, even children had sexual targets on their back. And it has nothing to do with Islam or anything else, because even in India, children are bought and sold for sex. These little girls are sold that they're going to become somebody else's wife, somebody's wife, and little boys are just sold as, sexual slaves. Bought and sold and kidnapped and purchased. Even goats have sexual targets on their backs. Goats. So let's be frank. With you not being frank, my dear lady, Miss Jalali, with you not being frank about the cesspool that is that area of the world, with all these liars and cheats and thieves and kidnappers and rapists, with you not being frank, the message comes through jumbled up. These pinkskins who are living in Manhattan suddenly don't understand that they think that, maybe this faction of one of these pirates, Taliban in this area of the world, this is the problem. Or the conservative clerics ruling in Iran is the problem. No, it's not. The problem is the dominant culture of that area of the world. The dominant culture, which is, a little thievish, a little piratish, a little rapist, a little, all of that. And here's the thing. I understand that you might, dear lady, Miss Jalali, I understand that you might not want to reveal these kind of information because you feel your pink-skinned friends are going to look down upon you and it's going to make you look bad. But then you shouldn't, because different societies are at different points on their evolutionary chart, on their evolutionary scale. Different societies are at different points. Some societies are up on their higher on their evolutionary scales. Some societies are lower, and this scale doesn't always go up. It goes up and down, up and down. So years ago, when decades, centuries ago, when the pink-skinned Europeans were eating out of a bucket, the Middle Easterns, because they were on the Silk Road and they had so much interaction with so many people passing through the Silk Road, their culture actually was much more progressive, because they came across so many ideas and so many people and so many ways of thinking, so many perspectives of ways of looking at life, so many different perspectives. So they were a lot more progressive. But since the Silk Road has been closed, and the shipping routes have been open, the Europeans, they mostly have these port cities. Their main cities happen to be ports and by the ocean. They have progressed more, and the Asians have gone back. The Middle Easterns, in specific, the South Asians, the Middle Easterns have gone back because land routes have been closed. So the whole idea that culture is solid and first of all is solid is a bullshit idea. The other idea that all the planet should have be at the same progressive cultural level, thinking the same, is bullshit. It can't happen. We are not all living in Manhattan. We are not all living in Los Angeles. So there is no way you can say that people in Afghanistan should be wearing miniskirts, or they're revealing traditional clothing. Women wearing the revealing traditional clothing, even though traditionally they only wore those clothes in front of women. So now my point is this, that you shouldn't feel so bad revealing the truth to the pink skins, because all you have to the pink skins have to know is that first of all, the habits that the nuns wear, where the fuck do you think these habits have come from? The habits that the Catholic nuns wear today used to be the clothing for all the women in pink skin land. So the nuns have kept the tradition, and it's not only the nuns, the Amish women, the Mennonite women, some of the more traditional Mormon women, they have kept this tradition. Wherever women feel that it's a seedy place, seedy environment, unsafe environment, in order to decrease the size of sexual target on their back, they wear more modest clothing. Just makes sense. So a lot of places have kept this, including the nuns. The reason the nuns wear those habits is to decrease the size of their sexual target on their back, because they don't want to have sex, period. So in order to decrease the size of your sexual target on your back, you wear very modest clothing, as the nuns wear today. But these used to be the clothes that all the pink-skinned women in Europe and North America were forced to wear, used to wear, not forced to wear, used to wear, just to protect themselves from being sexual targets. And that was just like 100 years ago. 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 200 years ago, they were all like this. They were all wearing burqas in Europe, North America, more or less similar to it. Or at least if it wasn't a burqa, it was a fucking, a scarf and, a long skirt and a scarf and something to, cover up. So that's on one side, and then about the culture of rape and culture of taking what's not yours, is all you have to remind the pink skins is that there is this proverb that it's not very old. It's relatively very well known in English language, that it says, the proverb goes such as like this. It goes as such: if a lady says no, she means maybe. If she says maybe, she means yes. But if she says yes, she's no lady. And there is a continuation of this that says, if a politician says yes, he means maybe, and if a politician says maybe, he means no. But if a politician says no, he's no politician. That aside, I want to point to the front piece of this proverb. If a woman says no, she means maybe. Huh? So for Homo sapiens, these bipedal humanoids, apes on planet Earth, our ancestors for the past starting 3 million years ago till today, till like 50 years ago, which this proverb was well known and used, have seen women as wanting to have sex. It's just that you have to insist on the male of the species has to insist on it, because women always want to have sex. It's just the male of the species has to keep insisting on it until he succeeds in having sex with the female. So this is how, still in animal world, this is how it's taking place. In the human world, since 50 years ago, the societies have become a little skittish about this matter and says, okay, no means no, and if a woman says no, it doesn't mean maybe, it means no, and you should back off, and blah, blah, blah. What is this? This no means maybe is the culture of rape. So rape is not really, in traditional cultures, rape is not really well defined. It's sort of like when you say that no means maybe, and that by itself, it means then you're blurring the line between forceful sex and non-forceful sex. You're blurring the line because you're saying no really doesn't mean no. So my point is this is a proverb in English language. So that means you shouldn't feel bad telling your pink-skinned friends that, well, you motherfuckers were the same way 50 years ago, up to 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 200 years ago. But now, in an area like Afghanistan, yes, this idea of rape is not very well understood, and they even rape goats, and they have sex with children, they steal children, they kidnap children, they buy and sell children for sex. And this is how they are. This is where their culture is currently. So, coming out and saying that no, women should wear whatever they want, the revealing clothing, it's not going to help the situation. It's not going to reduce the size of being a sexual target on their back. And it's going to misinform the pigskin audience into thinking that, there is no need for that women covering up over there, and they're being forced to cover up. Well, in actual fact, we know, as I explained, that there is a need for it, because the culture over there is a culture of they even sexualize children, for heaven's sakes. Of course they're going to sexualize women. They're going to look at women. They do look at women as sexual target, and they put a sexual price on women. If it's a good-looking, young, good-looking woman, she has a sexual price of, for example, this. And if it's an older woman, she has a sexual price of a reduced sexual price, smaller sexual target. So if you live in a society, my pink-skinned friends, if you live in a society that where secular laws are not rigorously enforced, there is no law and order, and then the society is a little traditional, and the society is a little, seedy, and people are, thieves and robbers and, rapists, and because it's all accepted, because it's a very, primitive society, as unfortunately Afghanistan has ended up being, because not having a proper civil authority in control of it for so long. In such society, you want to shrink the sexual target on your back as much as possible. So one of the reasons they tell even the boys to grow a beard is to make the manly face unpleasant for other men to have sex with. You see a bearded man, one bearded man looks at another bearded man and doesn't feel sexually aroused. But then when a bearded man looks at a woman or a young child without a beard, this is how they are. This is how we all are. This is the primitive ape inside us. Except the rest of the world, you have two different ways that the rest of the world have gone. You have the Northern Europeans, the Scandinavians, who have gone to the way of teaching people, raising the intellect of the society in order to, prohibit them from, just taking what they want. Don't steal, don't cheat, don't rape. Raping is also a kind of stealing. It's a kind of theft. You're stealing what doesn't belong to you without permission of the owner. So by raising the intellect of the society in general in Northern Europe, they have done away with this apish tendency to take what you want, insist on taking what you want, even if it means rape. And in some societies in the world, they have spent all their money in enforcing secular laws, against everything, including rape. So many people, because they fear the punishment of the law, they stay away from these primitive apish tendencies such as rape. So my point is this: in Afghanistan, in places like Afghanistan, India, Pakistan, Iran, Iraq, if there is real lawlessness, first of all, very few of them have educated their people, raised the intellect of their people to, so the people would, hold themselves back from stealing and cheating and raping and all of that. So the intellect has not been raised because of lack of education, lack of understanding, and so the only thing remaining is how vigorously the laws of a civil that results into a civil society is enforced. In places where the laws are not vigorously enforced, like Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, rape and kidnapping and theft and cheating and stealing, everything is prevalent, overtly. I mean, kidnapping children for sex is, overtly done. And in other places where, a little law and order is in place, much less. This still the tendencies is there because the intellect is not there. These apish tendencies are there, and things like kidnapping and raping and stealing and are done covertly. These are done covertly in places which some law enforcement is taking place. So my point is this: in a place like Afghanistan, where law enforcement is not vigorously taking place because it's a free-for-all, and the intellect is not raised, so people prevent themselves from raping and cheating and stealing and blah 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 blah. The only option is to reduce the target on your back. So if you tell if all the women agree to cover themselves with this piece of cloth, a potential kidnapper, rapist will be looking at a bunch of people with a piece of cloth on their heads, and the potential kidnapper cannot tell the price of each one of these guys, each one of these women, because he doesn't know is it a 70-year-old under this piece of cloth, or is it a 17-year-old? Because if it's a 70-year-old, I'm not going to pay the heavy price of going through the trouble of kidnapping her. But if it's a 17-year-old, I definitely will, go through the trouble of kidnapping her and, either selling her or raping her myself and then selling her, all of that. So these calculations that is going through the mind of many men in a seedy society such as Afghanistan, such as Iran, such as Pakistan, such as India, all over Africa, all over Middle East, these things that is going through the mind of these unintellectual men will not go in their mind if you put a piece of cloth on all the women and they cannot determine the price of either one. If you cannot determine their sexual price, you will not go through the trouble of, picking the cloth out each one of them and trying to figure out, is the price under this cloth or is the price under this cloth? That's the whole idea of let's cover all the women. That's the whole idea that women probably, I'm sure, women themselves want to be covered in unsafe environments. Women themselves, this is not something that Taliban want, women themselves. Just like you, Miss Jalali, if you go to a seedy part of Maryland, you're not going to be, going there in your nightgown. You're not going to be there in your miniskirt. You're not going to be there in your ball gown. You're going to, dress very modestly in order to, not to attract too much attention, too much sexual attention, in order to reduce the size of sexual target on your back. Even in fucking Maryland. But now you come and you write a prescription. You're sitting in Maryland and you're writing a prescription for your fellow Afghan women who are living in that shithole with, thieves and cheats and robbers and bandits and rapists and kidnappers. You're writing a prescription for them that, yes, you should stand up for yourself. Stand up for what? Goats and sheep have sexual targets on their back over there. That's where the culture is. Lack of education, the intellect of the society has not been raised, and there is no rigorous enforcement of laws, civil laws. What do you want them to do? They have to fend for themselves. And the only way women find to fend for themselves in such a shitty environment, in such a seedy society, is to, cover up. All the women agree that let's put a cloth on our head, cover the whole body. Therefore, nobody can put a sexual price on us because they don't know what's underneath. So if they don't know what's underneath, they may not go through the trouble of kidnapping one of us because they don't know what they're going to get, a 70-year-old or a 17-year-old. So let's cover up. Let's not, encourage the men. Let's not, let's hope by covering up we don't arouse the men. Folks, at the core of us, we are primitive, cannibalistic apes. As simple as it gets. And if you don't spend money on educating this primitive, cannibalistic ape, it remains primitive, cannibalistic ape. And in any country that there is not money being spent on education, you're going to have these problems. And Miss Jalali, I feel troubled that you're not helping the situation by, pretending that the problem doesn't exist. By stating that, no, traditionally we were revealing clothing, which is a lie. We only were revealing clothing in front of other women. By stating that, no, Afghanistan is much more progressive than it actually is. Again, another lie. By these things, by these things that you say, this is what happens. When the pink skins hear this from you, they feel that it's not a cultural problem, it's a Taliban problem, right? And then the public opinion turns towards that, yes, let's sanction these Taliban until, they learn their lesson and they let their people free. Afghan people are very free. That's why you have these rapists and thieves and cheats and, For fuck's sakes, in my shithole, the shithole I was born in, I and everybody else, we lock our cars, with chains. We lock. We lock. We used to lock, and still people over there do, with chains and different kinds of metal contraption and actual locks. We lock the car. We chain the seat to the wheel of the car, so nobody will fucking steal the car. I had like 3 different locking mechanism to lock my shitty car over there because I was scared to death someone's going to steal it. In a place where they steal, you have to lock with chain and lock. You have to lock your fucking automobile in such a place, and that was Iran. It's a little more, law and order than Afghanistan. In that environment that is so obnoxious, so seedy, that you even have to lock your car with a chain to the fucking tree, or lock your wheel to your seat in the car. It's in that kind of place. You think a 16-year-old girl with a big sexual target on her back should feel just fine wearing a miniskirt or traditional revealing clothing that traditionally Afghan women wore only in front of other women. She should wear those in the middle of streets and in Afghanistan and not worry about the thing. Fuck! The goats are worried being sexual targets. So here's the thing, man. The problem with you pretending that problems don't exist over there and the only problem is the Taliban is that the pink skins start thinking that the problem is only Taliban, and if we take away Taliban, or if we change the system over there, everything is going to be dandy. And therefore let's sanction Taliban and let's embargo Taliban in order to push them out of power, so the people of Afghanistan can be free and democratic, and so they can wear miniskirts. The problem with that, ma'am, is that the Afghan women, as it is, have a big sexual target on their back because of, the average average intellect of the Afghan society being low, and the law enforcement not being rigorously done. Afghan women are already are in a disadvantage. They have this sexual target on their back. They're already in a bad place. Now you add economic issues, economic problems to this. Their condition is going to be worse. Miss Jalali, please pay attention. By telling everybody the problem is the Taliban, you're trying you are, in other words, telling people that, okay, if we have to sanction and we have to not talk to Taliban, not sanction them and embargo them in order to push them out of power, and then everything will be dandy in Afghanistan. But we know that's not true. I know it, you know it. The problem is cultural, the problem is law enforcement, but mainly the problem is cultural. The culture needs to, shift. The culture needs to improve. The intellect needs to be raised. And that sanctions and embargo or changing the fucking leadership doesn't change that, doesn't improve the culture. It makes things worse. So there's this young woman in Afghanistan who, living in a fucking cesspool, is already at a disadvantage, has a sexual target on her back, is fearful for her life and safety not because of Taliban, but because living in such a, seedy society. Huh? Now you're adding poverty to that by promoting, sanctioning the governing system over there, or embargoing the governing system over there in order to remove them from power. You're adding poverty to her problems. This young imaginary woman in Afghanistan had a problem with the society around her regarding her health and safety. Now because of sanctions and embargo, you're adding poverty to her problems as well. You know what happens when poverty goes up? The size of the sexual target on her back increases. You see, when everything is short, when you're short of every commodity, sex, which is can be considered another commodity in that area of the fucking planet, or even in this area of planet, in the pink skin area of planet, there's prostitution. Sex is also as a commodity everywhere. So but in that area of the world, when sex becomes expensive, when the size of sexual target in their women's back increases because of poverty, her situation is going to be even worse, because I just said it. Because of poverty, the size of sexual target on her back increases. You're adding to the problem by pretending, by fronting, as they say, the kids say today, by pretending that the problem of women in Afghanistan is the leadership, is the Taliban, by not accepting, by not talking about the fact that no, the problem with women in Afghanistan is the city environment, is the culture as it is where it is right now. The problem with them is that, and the only thing that can improve that is education and contact. So my dear lady, Miss Jalali, what you should be promoting is this. Folks, leave the women of Afghanistan alone. They are wearing the clothes that they're wearing because they want to be safe. They don't want to be a sexual target. They don't want to reduce the size of their target, sexual target on their back. They want to reduce the size of that target. Therefore, they're wearing very modest clothing. Forget about modest. They're covering head to toe, so nobody can estimate their sexual price. Correct? So you should say, people, leave the fucking women of Afghanistan alone. Let them wear the kind of clothes that they feel safe wearing. Okay? On the other hand, you should be promoting more contact with Afghanistan from outside world. You should be promoting that the United States should go back to Afghanistan, not with soldiers, but with an embassy, with a big embassy. Try to promote tourism to Afghanistan, promote people traveling to Afghanistan, promote business in Afghanistan. This is what you should be promoting. Forget about trying to force the government over there to force the woman to wear miniskirts. Forget about that. Don't do that. That's wrong. Promote that the United States government should go in with an embassy, big embassy. The United States government should actually start incentivizing tourism to Afghanistan. Incentivizing, paying young Americans to go to Afghanistan, not as soldiers, but as tourists. Literally incentivizing, literally paying Americans to go to Afghanistan as tourists. Incentivizing, subsidizing. The only way Afghanistan is going to improve, the condition of women in Afghanistan is going to improve, is by contact with the outside world. Not soldier to civilian, but civilian to civilian. That is promotion of tourism to Afghanistan. United States government, in federal level, in the state level, they should be subsidizing, they should be paying. If they want to help, they should be paying civilians, American civilians, young, especially young, start with the young, pay American civilians to visit Afghanistan and go live there for a year, 2 years, who cares? Just pay them to live there, to have contact with the locals, civilian to civilians. That's how you raise the intellect of the local population. That's how you change the culture of the local population. You take people from a more progressive culture, you put them over there next to people with a less progressive culture. You mix the culture up and you raise the local culture. And the Americans who return as tourists a year after 6 months, a year, 2 years living as a tourist in Afghanistan, those who return from Afghanistan, it's good for you too. They're going to be, know Afghanistan, can speak a language, their language. They can, they know a lot more about Afghanistan, the real Afghanistan. You see what I mean? They have a better, even though it's good for the Americans because they have a very wider perspective in life. Especially if they go over there as young people, when they return back home, the impression that those shitholes have made on their mind is going to be giving them a much wider perspective. It's going to make much wiser Americans out of them by giving them a bigger perspective of the world. So what you should be promoting is not let the women of Afghanistan wear miniskirts. You should be saying that no, let them wear whatever fuck they feel safe to wear. But no sanctions, no embargoes, open up the embassy and start incentivizing Americans to go there as tourists for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and incentivizing this. What it means is that actually, the plane ticket would be subsidized by United States government, either at the federal level or the state level. Somebody, or the actually U.S. military can, a lot of all the fucking money that is going to make bombs can be used to subsidize the same young American people to, subsidize their housing and food and shelter in Afghanistan as tourists. Let's have subsidize the tourism to Afghanistan. Pay people to go over there and spend time over there. As simple as that. This is what you should be promoting. To address the real problem in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Iran, in Iraq, in India. The real problem is the culture has the culture has become what it is today. Once upon a time it was a lot more progressive. Now it's a lot more regressive. But it is where it is right now because of lack of contact, because the level of intellect has decreased. The level of intellect has decreased in the society, average intellect. To raise that, you need to bring in information from outside. You need to bring contact from outside. Again, you should be the one promoting the Silk Road. The Silk Road that the China is trying to build, that's the best thing that can happen for Afghanistan ever. That's the best thing we can hope for Afghanistan is that Silk Road opening up. And the best thing Americans can do is send tourists, subsidize tourism to Afghanistan, subsidize tourism to Pakistan, subsidize tourism to Iran. Don't cut. If your point should be, if we don't understand them, if we see there is a miscommunication with these shed holes, if we see it's a shed hole, we should have more contact with them in order to bring them out of shit. Not to cut contact with them, have more contact with them. Not with military contact, but civilian contact. This should be your point. Let's have, if we don't understand them, if we think they're shit, we should have more contact with them. The government should subsidize its citizens to have more contact with that shithole in order to raise the level of the shithole. Maybe they come out of shithole as well. That should be the objective. More contact. No embargoes, no sanctions. More contact. Eventually, in decades, maybe, if this goes through and more American tourists go over there and start living over there on extended period of time, Americans, Europeans, Canadians, who cares, whoever, go over there, start living on just live there as tourists, spend money on their, on their shops, let the local merchants make a little money with the through the tourism. And yes, there is some dangers involved. There is some dangers involved, but the casualties of tourism of pinkskins to Afghanistan is not going to be even comparable with the casualties of a military invasion. You see what I'm saying? Yes, there is tourism that happens in shed holes, might have a couple of casualties per year, maybe move 10, 20, whatever, small, lower double digits, might have casualties. Some crazy cocksucker over there decides to attack. But you can call them martyrs of peace, and the numbers are going to be extremely small comparatively to the number of casualties that the military invasion has resulted into. So yeah, there is some risk involved, but again, the government should be subsidizing. reducing incentivizing people to go over there and mingle with the local population. There's going to be a few casualties, but they should be, they should be accepted. The casualties should be accepted until the society opens up, and the more and more tourists goes over there, the more then it becomes normalized, the less the danger is going to decrease. The more the locals realize that these people are, they're a source of wealth and their source of money and their source of information, and they're coming here as friends, the lower their guards are going to be, and the more pleasant they're going to be towards these tourists. So there's going to be a few casualties at first, but eventually it's going to be dandy. The dandy that you really want, let the Afghans be free and be dandy and democratic. Let the tourists take the idea to them. Not the soldiers, but the tourists. Not through sanctions and embargoes, but through tourism and trade.